was a guy who looked pretty evil when he was down. You know, they had him down. He was fighting hard. He was, in my opinion, a sick person. Who would do that but a sick person?
Terror and chaos erupting at one of the most extravagant nights in Washington. A gunman storming the White House Correspondents' Dinner armed with a shotgun, a handgun, and multiple knives. NewsNation confirming with law enforcement sources there is a manifesto written by that suspect. In it, his plan to target Trump members of the Trump administration. The manifesto also saying that the shooter was not homing in on security or guests, but was willing to go through anyone necessary to reach his targets. This video showing the moment Vice President J.D. Vance was quickly pulled away by his security team. Here you can see the Vice President somewhat surprised at first and immediately moving with his escorts. Other guests at the table taking cover. Secret Service acting quickly, apprehending the suspect and saving lives. The gunman has been identified as Cole Thomas Allen, a 31-year-old Californian and a graduate of Caltech. Officials say he traveled from Los Angeles to Chicago, then to the Capitol, all by train, where he checked into the Washington Hilton Hotel. The White House telling NewsNation that the suspect's family warned authorities, raising a red flag minutes before that attack. Allen is set to appear in court tomorrow, where he will face multiple charges, including assaulting an officer with a deadly weapon. We're breaking it all down, what we know about the suspect's manifesto, how this happened, and why, with expert guests and witnesses who were in the room as security took action. Thank you so much for watching us this evening. I'm Nick Smith. Let's get straight to Hannah Brandt live at the White House. Hannah, there is so much to break down here. You and I were talking about the event yesterday. Neither of us could have expected anything like this.
Yeah, Nick, absolutely shocking what unfolded there at the dinner last night. And we are learning new details today from a White House official about this alleged shooter. Law enforcement has identified that suspect, as you said, as Cole Thomas Allen from California. Sources do tell NewsNation his manifesto clearly states he was trying to target Trump administration officials. And a law enforcement source revealing to us he was targeting President Trump specifically. The White House also telling me that he had a lot of anti-Trump and anti-Christian rhetoric, they say, on his social media accounts. Now, let's take a look at exactly how the suspect outlined his planned targets. This manifesto was originally obtained by the New York Post, but a source did confirm these parts of it to NewsNation, and it reads, administration officials, they are targets, prioritized from highest ranking to lowest. Secret Service, they are targets only if necessary. A White House official does tell me that minutes before the shooting happened, Allen sent his manifesto to his family members, his brother then contacting New London police in Connecticut to warn them. Secret Service and Montgomery County Police were told interviewed Allen's sister at her home in Maryland. She apparently told those law enforcement investigators her brother had a tendency to make radical statements, also saying he constantly talked about his plan to do something to fix the issues with today's world. And she confirmed to police that Allen bought 2 handguns and a shotgun that he stored at their parents' home without their knowledge. She also says he went to the shooting range regularly for firearm practice. And in addition, an administration official shares Allen was apparently part of a group called the Wide Awakes and attended a No Kings protest in California. Now, this shooting does certainly raise a lot of questions about the security precautions that were set up at this dinner. You can see in the security footage there on your screen the suspect trying to rush past those metal detectors and the Secret Service agents. President Trump, though, has been very complimentary of what he says was really quick action from law enforcement. This morning, he did post on his Truth Social, though, he doesn't believe that this would have even happened if the White House ballroom were already constructed. You know that's been a major point of controversy, but the president earlier in an interview sharing some more of his thoughts on the shooter's manifesto and exactly why this shooting happened. Take a listen.
It was a religious thing. It was strongly anti-Christian. If you're a consequential president, you're in much more danger than if you're not a consequential president. Most presidents are not very consequential.
And we are expecting, as you said, the suspect to be arraigned in a courtroom here in Washington, D.C. tomorrow, Nick.
Hannah, I have to ask you this. With all of this happening, how are officials who organized the White House Correspondents' Dinner actually responding to all of this?
Well, they too are really just trying to make sense of how this even happened. In a statement this morning that they released, they called this a harrowing experience. And the WHCA president, Weijia Zhang, did thank Secret Service and law enforcement for taking action to protect everyone who attended. She especially expressed gratitude that everyone is safe today and gave a nod to the many journalists who, of course, were caught in the midst of all of this unexpected chaos, but then immediately turned around to start reporting on what was happening in real time. Now, Zhang does say the White House Correspondents Association board is going to be meeting. They're going to talk about what's coming next. We know President Trump has said he wants to see this dinner rescheduled potentially in the next 30 days. But if that does happen, we would certainly expect to see a pretty intense focus on any security precautions that they may want to take. Nick?
Hannah Brand live at the White House. Hannah, thank you so much. Joining me now is Paul Eklof, former Secret Service Special Agent and Assistant Special Agent in charge for the Presidential Protection Division for both former President Obama and President Trump. Paul, good afternoon. So much to break down there. When you saw everything happening, what were your first thoughts?
Well, obviously, my first thoughts and those of any former agent is you wish you were there because you believe that you could step into the breach and prevent these sorts of things. But events like this are intentionally accessible, where it's media, guests, and staff, and that openness is part of what the Secret Service is protecting. If you turn every event into a hardened bunker, you lose the very democracy that the Secret Service is sworn to defend. And honestly, some of the loudest critics that I'm hearing, the level of security that would be required to eliminate all risk in the United States would exceed what any American would ever want to see. Protective details are balancing two things at once: security and freedom, and that tension never goes away.
Paul, I'm glad you talked about the balance of accessing public access to the event, because, Paul, my first question is, and I know it may be an interesting one to ask at this point, but wasn't everything done right in this situation because of the way Secret Service was able to react and protect everyone and the suspect was apprehended?
That's an absolutely excellent question. And I would say from a classified perspective, I'm sure I could find things to fix. However, if this is what failure looks like, please define success for me. Having worked protective details for multiple presidents at this very venue, I can tell you this is exactly how it's supposed to work when the threat emerges. The mission is to protect life, and potentially dozens of lives were saved.
Paul, you talk about that venue. I do want you to break that down for us as you explain this there, because walk us through how security is layered at an event like this so that people at home understand why we're saying that, hey, if this is failure, I'm sorry, guys, this was a success.
Events such as this, especially one with so many people of the president's cabinet and other protectees at, there are an incredible number of layers. There are concentric rings of security that start farther out from the hotel. This is a publicly accessible hotel. And then as you get closer to the ballroom, the magnetometers or metal detectors where this individual was apprehended is on a different floor from the event. There are visible security precautions put in place as well as ones you don't see. So there tends to be a confusion that more layers will automatically make people safer. But in reality, pushing security too far out stretches resources thinner and weakens the most critical inner layers. Effective protection is about precision and response time, not about distance. So we really should judge this by the outcome, and we should celebrate the heroism that we saw. An officer was shot standing between a mass murderer and a ballroom full of potential victims. And the Secret Service, the Metropolitan Police, and others deserve our highest respect and praise for stopping this assassin.
And Paul, we're looking at the video now, even as you speak, and we see this guy just take off and run out of nowhere. And you're saying, Nick, this is what they train for. Whereas you may have been shocked at somebody, hey, what's going on? They've already answered that question in their head, and they're stopping the potential threat.
They have run this scenario a number of times at the training center in Maryland, and they face these threats in a more protective environment. This hotel specifically has a history to the Secret Service. In 1981, John Hinckley shot President Reagan and 3 others, and Agent McCarthy took a bullet to the abdomen, a devastator round from a .22 handgun. So this hotel is known to the Secret Service. Concerns are a problem here, and it does sit. It's not a military base. It's an active city, a working venue. You can't seal off city blocks without fundamentally changing the nature of the event. And what we saw then in 1981 is interesting to parse. Those agents and officers were seen as heroes, and yet this is being couched as a failure in 2026. That baffles me a little bit, but I understand the questions. People want to feel safe. But this type of activity, this violence, it doesn't emerge in a vacuum. We shouldn't ask how this happened. We should ask what worked, because a lot worked yesterday.
Paul, I've got to ask you this, too. We're talking about the particular venue there and what worked and what did not work. This hotel has traditionally stayed open for the public for these events. Mr. Trump says he hopes to reschedule it quickly and not let the attack disrupt longstanding traditions. Is that realistic? What changes do you expect going forward?
The changes that I would make at that event, I wouldn't express publicly, to be honest, because I believed the concentric layers of security worked. The men and women of the Secret Service and law enforcement knowingly placed themselves between danger and democracy. And that's not rhetoric, that's reality. This site is safe and secure. Now, is it risk-free? No. There's always a non-0% chance of an attack in this country or any other. And the Secret Service has stood capably and courageously in that breach for over 100 years. But questions have to be asked about what's acceptable risk and what can be controlled.
Paul,
this individual may have acted alone, but he did not radicalize alone.
Did not radicalize alone, and that was exactly where I was going there, because none of this happens in a vacuum, like you said there. And we're now learning that the suspect had checked into the hotel as a guest. Should there have been a way to flag him ahead of time? And where would that lie in the area of personal privacy?
Well, and that's interesting. And as I said before, the level of security that it would take to eliminate risk completely would not be acceptable, nor should it be acceptable to any American. We can't stop what is not yet a crime. Law enforcement and the Secret Service in that operates within the Constitution. We don't detain people for their thoughts or possibilities. This individual's online rhetoric, his comments, his attending constitutionally protected demonstrations should not preclude him from being able to travel throughout the country or go to a hotel. That being said, there were certainly a number of other indicators that he gave to family members, as we're hearing, friends, online platforms, where he moved from rhetoric to potential action. Now, there's often a digital trail of reinforcement, encouragement, constant validation of these extreme views. And when you allow that, you're not just observing risk, you're creating it.
Paul, I've got less than 30 seconds. I have to let you go here, but quickly, we talked about how the family played a role in notifying authorities. Tell us why that's so important, as difficult as it may be as a family member.
It's incredibly difficult, but this individual is only alive today because of, believe it or not, the restraint of federal law enforcement and local law enforcement, their capability and their training. They were able to take him into custody rather than having to kill him, which is often the case in these scenarios. But these early triggers, these early signs of the descent into violence are noticeable. It rarely emerges immediately. That the family notifying someone and getting this individual help. He's a brilliant young man who had a future that he threw away through violence of action for reasons we will start to emerge in the coming days.
Paul Eklof, thank you so much for giving us part of your evening.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Coming up, NewsNation is reviewing the attempts to Mr. Trump's life in Butler, Pennsylvania in July of 2024 and at Trump International Golf Club in September of that same year. And now, the 2026 White House Correspondents' Dinner when we come back.